Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome back to CraigTube. Got myself a nice Canadian blonde beer here. It's a Cooper's Kit. And you can see it's got a fair amount of foam on there. I did get a question about this, and I will address it in this video. It's not quite clear, a little chill haze, but it's still doing all right. And it's just sort of a lawnmower beer, even though I'm not mowing the grass right now. But so cheers, everyone. Thank you. Oh, boy, that's nice and refreshing. My first beer of the day. Sorry about that. Itchy nose. Okay, so I got more questions, and so I wanted to, get to them. And there's even more after this. So hey, why not? Why not address this stuff? This is good stuff. Lots of stuff to learn. Lots more to learn about with this than just to watch me brew up a Cooper's or whatever, because that's all I'm doing these days. So I did get some questions, and here they are. So, hope you guys are doing well. This question, and I've been told many, many times, where's your glasses? And I always forget them, and I turn on the camera, and I start a video, and it's like, oh, I forgot my glasses. Well, I have glasses now. They don't help much. At least nobody can complain. Okay, I do have a vision problem, so that's why I look close at things. I've never really talked about that. I was born visually impaired, so that's why these don't really do much, because it's already bad. These are not magic things when you have already problems with your eyes. So that explains that, and I didn't cover that in previous years because I didn't want that to be the focus of, people was, he's blind, look at that, well, that's the way it is. I can't drive a car, and I can't catch a frisbee to save my life, so there you go. All right, so that's what we've got. Now everybody knows. All right, so it's probably worse with the glasses on, but anyways, we'll tackle this, okay, I'm going to avoid last names. Trond, I don't know if this is a real name. I think it is. Like if that's his real name or not. And he'll know who he is. He says, have you seen or tried aerodrums? This isn't a brew question, by the way. It's not a brew question. Or maybe play some more guitar for us. Okay, so for the first question, yeah, these aerodrums are, they're like, you hold these sticks, and there's little white balls on the ends, and then you have cameras or a camera somewhere that tracks the white balls, and then on the computer there's a virtual drum kit that so when you do this, you can actually play the drums. It's pretty cool. I almost bought them a couple years ago, but I ended up buying my Roland TD-17 drum kit instead. So because I don't know. I just wanted to be able to hit stuff. I guess that's what that is. So there you have that. As far as playing the guitar goes, no, I'm not really a guitar player. I do know some chords, and I can write, I've written some songs on the guitar, but it's not really something that I think is, it's not my forte. I mess around with the guitar, but it's not really something it's not my instrument. Let's just put it that way. So it's not something that I feel like there's nothing there to show, really. So I also look at prepping videos nowadays. Prepping videos. The email is longer than this. I've cut this down. Prepping means that you store lots of food away that can be that won't go bad, and in prepping for some sort of an apocalypse or disaster, or in some parts of the country there are things like this that happen where there's floods or people lose their power from a storm or something like that, and so you want to be ready for this. You want to have a source of heat, which I have a kerosene heater down underneath my bench here that is a big thing that I can heat this whole house with if I want. Prepping food, making sure you've got lots of batteries, rechargeable batteries. You're making sure you've got batteries to charge your batteries, and food. And I think it's a good idea. I'm sort of prepped. I'm not really, because I live in an area where it's pretty safe. We don't have a lot of floods and storms and things here, or hurricanes and whatnot. So in my 53 years, I'm trying to make myself sound younger. In my 53 years of life, there's never been a disaster big enough. Not saying there wouldn't be. So I am prepped. I do have lots of batteries. I do have lots of ways to charge my cell phone. I have lots of different ways to power up my router if it's just a couple of days and I need internet. But I also have lots of cans of Chef Boyardee stored in the cupboard. So, but I'm not a big prepper. Some people have, just shelves and shelves and cupboards of food and things like that stored and things like. I just don't live in an area where it's really a big threat. And I'll be sorry if it ever does happen because I'm not really prepped, but I'm good enough for what usually happens around here. And his last thing is about how to avoid food waste. I don't know. Just eat it. Eat the food, freeze the food, preserve the food, pickle it, ferment it, sanitize everything. I'm not a big, I've made pickles and things like that, but I don't can and jar for preservation. I can and jar for flavor usually. So my stuff probably wouldn't last too long on a shelf. Maybe my garlic would. The fermented stuff actually lasts quite a long time. But if you lose your refrigeration, you might have a problem. So prepping, no, I'm not a big prepping guy. But as far as food waste, find ways of preserving it, pickling it, fermenting it. Okay, let's move on to Rich Goyette. This guy's, Rich is a friend of mine, a long friend of mine. He says, who put the bump in the bump? Who put the bump in the bump? Yeah, he's trying to trick me here. That's a song, actually. Who put the bump in the bump? The answer to that question is quite simple. You might look for somebody like Jerry Goffin, who helped write that song. And if you haven't heard the song, well, go look it up. How to make a how-to video is what he's asking. And this is something that I could go on for a long time about, but I won't because this is, I don't want to make this video too long. The thing that I do when making how-to videos, because that's kind of what I've focused this channel on, is how to brew, how to cook, how to, make beer and stuff, how to make wine, do stuff like that. One of the things that happens is I get an idea and then I just let it sit in my head and ferment for a while. I'm good at fermenting things, but it just sits there and I think about it and it grows and then I start ordering in my brain, okay, this is how would I want this explained to me if I didn't know how to do it? What to start with, how to set it up so that, the people, you can sort of make, people think or help people think that they're about to get, some decent information. You don't want to just dive into the middle of it. You kind of have to, and I've been accused before of rambling on and not getting to the point. And I know that I do that. But, you've got to set stuff up so that people have a basic understanding of what you're about to talk about. And then I storyboard it in my brain. I storyboard it. What am I going to do first? And then how's that going to connect to the next part and the next part? And then there's going to be a finished product. And that's the simple answer to that. It usually takes me, if it's going to be a major how-to video, like on my vinyl channel, I did a how to set up a turntable video. And that took me a couple weeks to think about. I don't write things down much because I find that stuff will, if it's important, it'll stay in my memory. And that video, I thought, okay, they got to do that first, but they need to know this, but they probably don't need to know that. And then how am I what's the cameras? You got to have an idea in your head what kind of a camera angles you want to have. Like if it's, you're doing a close-up, people are focused in on that thing that you're doing, right? If you're doing something really important, then you can't just have a wide shot because they're looking at all the other crap around the room and everything. You've got to have that close-up shot of that thing, that one thing that is important that you're doing, like setting up a phono cartridge or whatever it was, things like that. And the same with brewing, you've got to, show the stuff, show what it is that you're talking about. Different camera angles, different takes. There's a lot of editing involved. That's a how-to video. And that's the short answer. The long answer is too long for this video. Okay? Thanks, Rich. Rich Goyette. Check him out on Spotify and iTunes and everything. The guy's an amazing musician, songwriter, engineer, and everything like that. So, there you go. All right. Jeff B. I'll just put the first letter of the last name. Jeff B. He's got here. He's having lots of trouble with carbonation in the Cooper's plastic style bottles. Okay, I've got... if I pull one down from there, it's going to fall all over the place. Cooper's has these 750 milliliter plastic bottles, and they supply them with their brewing kits. I've got some. I should have brought some, but I can't get around all these stands and everything without knocking something over. Here's the thing about these plastic bottles, as opposed to the glass bottles. Plastic expands, it stretches, glass doesn't. So, I read the rest of his question. I know what he's getting at here. If you're going to use the plastic bottles, which is fine, I used to use them for a while, you've got to put a little bit more carbonation sugar in them. Because what happens is, when the beer's at room temperature and it carbonates, it stretches the bottle. So the bottle expands a little bit. It gets very hard and stiff. And, then when you put after a few weeks, you put the beer in the fridge, well, the beer gets cold and it contracts. It loses volume, because that's what happens to things when they get cold. And then the carbonation tries to stretch the bottle more again, because it starts to come out. And there's an experiment that, I had a big argument with a friend of mine once who says that when you take a bottle of, Coke or whatever, Pepsi, you open it, and you pour some glasses. He says, when you close it, squeeze the bottle so that when you put the lid on, there's no air in it. That will keep it carbonated. No, it won't. That is wrong. Well, all that's going to happen is the carbonation is going to go, oh, look, we've got lots of, this plastic, this thing expands. We got lots of places to go. So by the end of, a couple of days, the bottle will be unsqueezed again, and the soda is going to be flat. So what you want to do is make sure that you're not leaving any room. The plastic can't be soft when it's in the fridge, when the beer gets cold. Because then what happens is the beer uncarbonates. All right, so you're going to have to add a little extra carbonation sugar to your bottles. And maybe, if you can, I don't know if you can do this, but try to let them carbonate in a slightly cooler climate. So that, you're not going to be putting so much pressure on those bottles. And then when you put it in the fridge, there won't be such a difference in the temperature. There still will be, but the bottom line is just use more carbonation sugar, just a little more, maybe half a teaspoon more or whatever. See what happens. Try it with a couple of bottles first and see what happens. That bottle should come out of that fridge rock hard, and if it does, then you're going to get good. You should have good carbonation. Something's under carbonated with those bottles that you're using, and they're softening in the fridge and allowing the carbonation to escape from the beer. Okay. Because now all of a sudden there's more room in the bottle when the bottle expands. The carbonation says, yeah, there's more space here. It's a controversial subject, but it's science. All right? When the bottle is squeezed or when it's soft, the carbonation is going to come out of the liquid. That's the way that works. Thank you for the question, and thank you for the kind remarks. Birdie B says, with all the wine that you brew, do you bottle it or keg it? Says, I would like to know how easy it is to keg wine, and if you've ever thought of doing that. Okay, this is a good question. Wine, most of the time, is not supposed to be carbonated. In fact, we work hard to take the carbonation out of the wine. Got some some wine brewing right here. We work very hard to take the carbonation out of the wine that builds up during the fermentation process. With beer, we don't want that. It's okay if beer goes into a bottle or a keg kind of carbonated, just from the fact that some of the CO2 that is produced during fermentation remains in the beer. And that's fine. We're good with that. But with wine, we're not good with that. So with wine, we work very hard. We have things and drill attachments over there that help us get the carbonation out of the wine before we bottle it. So what happens when you put the wine into a keg? The only way that you could do it, but the only way that you could do it is to only turn on the CO2 when you want to dispense the wine. And there's always going to be some CO2 inside there that's pressing down on the wine, keeping some pressure. And that could get into the wine and make the wine taste a bit carbonated. And you don't want that. There was one instance where I messed up a batch of wine. I forgot to drain the star san out of the fermenter before I made the batch. So the wine was messed up, and it was weak, and it was watery. So I carbonated it. I put it into a keg, and I made it into a sparkling, sort of a wine cooler kind of thing, and it worked. But I'm thinking in general, if you're putting wine into a keg with the CO2 pressure that you need to dispense that wine could actually eventually become a bit carbonated, and you don't want that. So that's something that you can try on your own. I wouldn't do it. I know it sounds handy. You could always take the CO2 off the wine and purge the keg every time you pour a glass of wine. That's a big pain in the ass. So I wouldn't do that. But you could do it. You certainly could do it. Make a sparkling wine. Carbonate it just like you do beer. I wouldn't do it with red wine, but you could. White wine might taste okay like that. Okay, so that's that question. Have that over there. Right. So, Snout Lad. I've got 3 more left. 3 more questions here, I think. Yeah. Snout Lad says, I got the Cooper's DIY beer kit and have tried brewing twice, but both times it starts fermenting and foaming up for a few hours. Then the foam goes away and it tastes and smells sour. Oh boy. Okay. I read this previously and I kind of thought about it. Okay. When you first start brewing a batch of beer, when you put the yeast in, so you get your beer, everything's mixed together, put your yeast in. Within about 24 hours, the yeast is gonna multiply. It's gonna get all excited and everything. And there's gonna be a big foam thing that happens. I don't think you guys can see back there, and it didn't happen with this because this is wine. Wine doesn't generally do that very much, but there's going to be a big eruption. I've seen it go up to all the way up to the top of these fermenters that I use. And then a lot of times after that stage is done, and there's probably a name for it. I don't know what it is. After that stage is done, things start to settle down a bit, and you're left with that krausen ring that you see around the inside of the fermenter. And then the beer just keeps on fermenting away until it's finished. So now he's using the Cooper's DIY kit, which has a fermenter that doesn't have an airlock. So my first question is, are you letting it ferment for long enough? Or are you waiting for that, when that settles down, you think, oh, it's done, I'll just drink it now. So no, that's the first thing, is make sure it's fermented out completely. So that's normal, that eruption at first and then a calming of it within the next first 2 days, 2 or 3 days, or even the first day. As far as a sour taste, I don't know. What temperature are you fermenting this at? You didn't indicate what temperature you're doing it at. If it's too high, then you're going to get a crappy tasting beer. Now, I've been told that Cooper's yeast tolerates higher temperatures, but I still, years and years ago, I used to brew beer at higher temperatures because I didn't know what I was doing. And I always had crappy tasting beer. It was just not the best. I put ice in it. I did everything I could. Beer is expensive here. I just put up with it. I put up with the taste, or else I didn't drink. So be careful with the fermentation temperature. And the third thing is that, if you're not used to the taste of home brew or you haven't tasted it yet, there's a different taste to home brew than there is to store-bought beer a lot of times. It's got sometimes it has a more, cidery taste to it. Sometimes, not always. And especially when you're doing these kits, it can, it's not going to be as good as a refined all-grain recipe, Just try to keep track of those things. Make sure you sanitize properly and watch your temperature. Make sure it's fermented all the way. Use your hydrometer. Get a good hydrometer. Don't use the one that comes with the Cooper's DIY kit. At least the one I have isn't accurate anyways. Maybe they fixed it. And try a different yeast. Get a good White Labs or a US-05 or a Nottingham or something. A good yeast. I mean this sincerely. It will make a big difference to your beer. I know for me it did. I'm not saying the Cooper's yeast is bad, but I don't prefer it myself. So, you've got that option to go out and get an expensive yeast, an ale yeast, and use it. You reuse it. I've been using the same yeast for a year. I don't even remember what it was. It was some White Labs liquid yeast. A year. And I've got 2 jars of it in the fridge there waiting to do my next batch. So, and I've always got surplus. I end up pouring some out. It's just reuse it. Get it out of that thing, put it in a jar, make sure the jar is sanitized, put it in your fridge, and try to use it as quickly, as soon as you can. Some people have more success than others at keeping that fresh. I find that mine goes off in about a week. So I have to use it quite quickly. So something I'm doing wrong, but I've been reusing this for a year, this yeast, and it's really made a big difference in the taste of my beer. Okay? So that's that. Oh, I like that. And that's a Cooper's Canadian Blonde beer kit. Done with dextrose. I know. There's a lot of really high grade home brewers out there that wouldn't touch that, and that's fine. We all have our different levels of what we do for different reasons, and I don't have anything against that at all. They're doing what they're doing for their own reasons, and I'm doing what I'm doing for my own reasons, and all the viewers can choose what they want to do for their own reasons. That's what we need to remember. Okay. Now, the last question from Paul M. Will you sing for us? Well, this isn't the last question. All he said was, will you sing for us? La, 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 la. Yeah, there you go. Is that good enough? Is that good? If I sing anything copyrighted, it might get flagged off YouTube. That's the thing. I got to be careful. In my arms again. Just want to feel you in my arms again. That's all. Okay. This is the last question. My name is Michael, and I live in Adelaide, Australia, home of the Cooper's Brewery. I'm not good at reading things off of papers. Over the past few weeks, I have been getting back into home brewing after about 5-6 years of buying beer. And yes, his beer's expensive, like mine. Got back into home brewing probably because he couldn't afford it. Couldn't afford the price of the damn stuff. I only ever use the Cooper's products as I have very little time to spare. So beer's expensive, and he has to brew because he can't afford it, and he doesn't have a lot of time. I've said it a million times. My question for you is, what tips can you suggest for improving the head? Now, I had an interview with John Palmer a few years ago, and he called it foam. I'm just going to read this email the way, some of you, I know you guys, okay? There's a reason why he reverts to the word foam. I make sure the glass is Glassware is clean, and I follow the instructions carefully, but never seem to get good foam. All right, so we're talking about the head, the foam, whatever you want to call it. All joking aside, and as you can see, this one didn't last all that long, but it still has a little ring, a cap. It's nice. It's not completely, flat and bare and terrible. Foam is a long, complicated subject, and there's chemistry, and there's just does he say he kegs bottles? Right, it doesn't matter. Look, I brew these Cooper's kits at a 19 liter volume instead of a 23 liter. That's the first thing. And I've noticed that because there's more, the concentration of the malt is more because there's less water in the beer. You got more proteins per ounce or whatever whatever it is. So that's the first thing you do. Second thing is, make sure if you're kegging, you make sure you've got a good pressure for pouring the beer, a serving pressure. Couldn't think of the word, but not too much, because then your beer's gonna go flat. Like it's when you pour soda, and you just expelled all the CO2 out of it because you poured it too severely, too rough. If you're really having a problem with it, and you're not, obviously, like I'm not unhappy with that, because I'm going to drink the rest of this, like at the end of this video, and I'm going to go get another one, and it's going to have a nice cap on it, like it did first in the very beginning of this. Try adding some, maltodextrin, if you can get it. Put about 300 grams of maltodextrin, how do you pronounce that, in your batch of beer. That'll help. I used to do that, and it did help a lot. Or if you've got a little bit more time, get some malts, like some specialty grains, some of the ones that create foam. Carafoam. Other ones, look up, do a search on John Palmer's site or just on Google itself, which grains create head in beer. And you'll see which ones to use, and just get a little 500 gram or 250 gram bag of the stuff, and just steep it for 20 minutes while you're, washing your dishes or whatever. And then use that as your strike water to make your Cooper's kit. That might help too. In fact, it will help. It depends on your everything. It depends on your fermenters, or your glass, the shape of your glass. What kind of soap you use in your glass, how you're serving the beer, if it's bottled, if it's kegged. There's so much that goes into this, and you kind of have to experiment, see what works for you. But definitely add some, if you're really having trouble, reduce your thing to 19 liters for one thing, and then if that doesn't work, then add some Carapils or Carafoam or whatever the one that is that adds the. It's been a while since I've used anything in mine, because I don't have a problem with that, because if you go out and buy just a standard, run of the mill beer from a beer store or wherever you buy your beer from, and you pour it, and what's this been, 20 minutes? After 20 minutes, that's what it's going to look like. In fact, it won't even look like that, a store-bought beer. So I'm doing pretty good. I've got some lacing. I got a little bit of, a little bit of foam around the edge, and that helps with the mouthfeel and makes it taste a little bit better. So that's that. Good luck with that. I hope that helps. I want to make sure that you guys subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Click that like button. Click the bell below there over here, because that's how you're going to get notified if I make new videos, because some of you may have missed some, So make sure you ring that bell. And make sure you go to tgtshirts.com to pick up one of these special edition gold Craig Tube shirts. They're a little more expensive, but they are kind of cool. and they aren't going to be available forever. So if you want one, you better get in there. And there'll be there's also new versions of the old shirts as well. So if you haven't got an old Craig Tube shirt yet, well, now's the time. They've been updated, and we've got everything all buffed up to make you guys happy, and hope you enjoy the shirts if you do buy one. Thank you for that. Anyways, I got to go because guess what? It's empty. So thank you guys for watching. We'll be back very soon with more of your questions and more other stuff as well. Please be safe, and we'll see you real soon. Take care, guys. Cheers. Thanks.